This is the new 2026 Kia K4 Turbo Hatchback, and it looks like a sporty hot hatch. It's also got a turbo 4-cylinder engine with almost 200 horsepower, and it comes from Kia's sporty GT line. Unfortunately, this car isn't exactly what I was hoping for, and today I'm going to review the K4 Turbo Hatchback and explain why, and I'll show you all of its quirks and features. Have you ever just Googled yourself? I did it a while back and it was genuinely creepy. Way too much personal info just out there for anyone to find. Even if you're not a YouTube personality or just Ryan Lopez, it isn't always a comfortable thing to not have control over what information about you is available online. That's why I've been using DeleteMe for years now. The more you put yourself out there, the more your personal info ends up floating around on sites you've never even heard of. DeleteMe goes in and removes your info from data broker sites, companies that collect and sell your personal data to basically anyone, including scammers. It runs in the background and just handles it, so you don't have to think about it, which, given everything else I've got going on, I really appreciate. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for DeleteMe. Right now, my audience can get 20% off their plan at joindeleteme.com/demuro. Use promo code DEMURO at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/demuro, code DEMURO. All right, time for the quirks and features of the Kia K4 Hatchback, starting with the basics. The K4 is Kia's new compact car, and it replaces the Forte. The K4 sedan debuted last year, and the hatchback is new for 26, and is pretty similar to the sedan, except with no rear end. In fact, they literally basically just took off the back of the sedan. The hatchback is the same car as the sedan right up to the end of the back doors. And then instead of a trunk, you have a hatch. It's all pretty simple. The result is that the hatchback's about 11 inches shorter than the sedan, which is a pretty significant amount, and it's a lot more attractive. The sedan is a little bit kind of ungainly and oversized for the segment. It looks a little awkward and weird. The hatchback doesn't really have that problem. It certainly looks more exciting, more aggressive, sportier, younger, more fun. It really is a much more attractive car than its sedan counterpart. As for the exterior quirks and features, there are quite a few. One is the giant orange running lights. When the car is on, you can see up front, big, and they're vertical and horizontal. They're quite large, and in fact, when you're driving this car during the day with no headlights on, they are so bright that if you get close to something, like in a parking spot or the car in front of you, it lights up as orange because of your giant orange running lights, which are a very distinctive look to this car. Also distinctive to this car in terms of lighting, the turn signals in back. You can see these sort of vertical and diagonal lines in the turn signals when they turn on, which looks kind of cool and again gives it a little bit more of exciting, kind of sporty character instead of your normal, basic, boring turn signals. Now, to me, the most interesting exterior detail of this car is the door handle on the back doors. You can see it's not mounted on the body of the car. Instead, it's upright, vertically mounted on the rear pillar, and you open up the door this way. Not that unusual, but a little strange. The most interesting part is that this design detail is shared with the sedan. Like I mentioned, these cars are the same up through the rear doors, and that means the sedan gets these doors that really look like they belong in a hatchback. But there they are here, just like on the sedan. And of course, behind the rear door, then things change and become hatchback specific. But a nice, interesting design quirk. Also interesting when it comes to opening the car, I love the key. I love the way it looks, love the way it feels. I love how the lock button is sort of mounted diagonally on top, almost like a detonator that you're pressing. It feels cool and it feels good to press the lock button on this car. But I especially like that any button you press, the little Kia logo on the key actually lights up in green to confirm that it got your press. So when you push a button, Kia lights lights up for just a second in green, which is kind of a cool little detail that you get to see every time you press lock or unlock for the car. Just another nice little interesting Easter egg detail. As for powertrains, two are available in the K4 hatchback. The base engine is a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, about 145 horsepower, and that is only offered with a CVT automatic. Or you can step up to this, the GT Line Turbo, which has a turbo 4-cylinder that's 190 horsepower, and that is mated only to an 8-speed automatic. No manual transmission in this car, all front-wheel drive, no all-wheel drive, nothing like that, no GR Corolla situation. And even the big engine, the turbo, isn't the fastest thing on the planet. 0 to 60, probably in the low to mid 7-second range for this car. Certainly not a competitor for a GR Corolla or a Focus RS or any other kind of modern, really hot hatchback. This is sort of a warmish hatchback. And as for pricing, the regular Kia K4, the sedan, starts around $23,000 with shipping, which is pretty reasonable in today's kind of inflationary world where cars are getting more expensive. That's a pretty affordable number. Now, the hatchback isn't offered with some of the base level trims you can get in this sedan. Instead, the entry level hatches and EX models is pretty well equipped, so the starting price for the hatchback is around $26,000. If you want to get the GT line, you pay just a little bit extra. It mainly includes 18-inch wheels. That's its primary benefit, but the GT line also comes with a few other kind of style upgrades throughout the car. The really top of the line K4 hatch is this one, the GT line Turbo. So you can get the GT line with the base engine, but if you get the Turbo, it starts around $30,000. This one has been equipped to around $33,000, including all of its options. This is a fully equipped car, and that price is around the starting figure of a Volkswagen GTI. So an entry-level base model GTI or a fully equipped K4 GT line turbo hatchback. About the same number. But anyway, next we move inside the K4 GT line turbo hatchback. I gotta say the interior is pretty nice. I have some disappointments with this car. I'll primarily share when I'm driving it, but inside, looking at the materials and the design, definitely not one of them. This is a well laid out, high quality interior, especially for a vehicle at this price point, the sort of $28,000 to $33,000 price range. This is a nice place to be for that number. And there are some especially good materials I'm surprised to see, like the seats, which you can see two-tone perforated leather down the center, which looks nice, and then this sort of white rim all the way around looks pretty cool and looks pretty high-end. You also have GT line imprinted, debossed into the seats, which also looks pretty cool and pretty high-end. Same deal with the steering wheel, which again is two-tone. The horn pad in this area above, separate color from the rest of the wheel, gives it kind of a luxury car feel and distinctive look. You also have a flat bottom for this steering wheel, which adds kind of a sporty character to this car. More importantly, though, there is a really impressive level of equipment in this vehicle. You can see over on the driver's door panel, you have these 5 buttons, all of which are impressive. The first couple are seat memory. So you press on those and whatever memory setting you've set, the seat will go back to it. Not something you frequently see in a compact car. Next, you have a heated steering wheel, which is also a pretty nice luxury feature to see. And then you have heated and ventilated seats, which again, pretty nice, pretty high-end. Of course, heated and ventilated seats for both front seats in this car. Beyond that, you have an excellent driver assist system in this car, sort of self-steering and auto braking, auto adaptive cruise control, which you can turn on with these steering wheel buttons over on the side. Again, surprisingly impressive for a compact car at this price point. I also love to see the blind spot cameras, which appear in the gauge cluster. You put on the turn signal and you can see the blind spot camera appears in whichever direction you are signaling. It works left or it works right. It is a truly great feature, and I wish it were included in a lot more cars. Very impressive to see that, and especially impressive to see it kind of trickle down to the K4. It's in other Kia models, but now it's in the compact. Another nice feature in here is the sunroof. It's a rather large sunroof, a little bigger than your typical one over the front seats, and it opens fully. In order to do that, it has to open over the roof of the car, which you don't don't see too much these days in sunroofs. Used to be more common, but it does open, and it does open over the roof. An interesting design detail, but nice to see it there. I also like to see another design detail, the climate controls here in the center control stack. They are not integrated into the screen, so you can adjust at least the most commonly used climate control functions using actual physical switches here in the center. Now, it's a little bit odd that the climate control screen occupies this space, sort of between the gauge cluster and the central infotainment screen. This space is basically entirely blocked by the steering wheel rim if you're sitting in the driver's seat, so it's not a good place to have that, but it is nice to have a fixed location where climate control is displayed rather than some other cars where it pulls up on some screen in the infotainment, but it's not always there. At least you have a spot for it, even if it's a little bit blocked by the steering wheel, so you can't see it that well. It's worth pointing out this space is also a touchscreen, so while you can make your primary climate adjustments with the switches in the center, if you want to do smaller kind of fine-tuning items, they can be done in this sort of oddly placed climate screen between the screens in the car. And on that subject, let's talk through the screens. In the center, you have the main infotainment screen, which is rather large and operates very well. It's very intuitive, simple, easy to use. It has a nice home screen. It's all great. Most people connect their phones, use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but if you are using the kind of native automaker infotainment system, it works well in Hyundai and Kia models. And I like the fact that it's easy to pull up the camera system. There's a button right here, P with a little camera. You push that and the cameras pop right up to make parking a little bit easier. Even if you haven't gone into reverse and activated the backup camera, you can still pull up your camera system. I also like the fact that there are physical buttons below this screen in order to go to kind of the main screen functions. Obviously the volume dial in the center, which is nice to have and feels surprisingly heavy, like a nice weight to it, not cheap. Again, kind of punching above this car's price point. But you also have buttons for the other basic functions of the infotainment system, so you can easily tap a button and go directly to there without having to go through screen menus, which is nice to see. Now, the gauge cluster screen, unfortunately, is disappointing, like it is in most Kia and Hyundai models. You do have that wonderful blind spot camera system, like I mentioned, but beyond that, it just isn't really all that configurable. You can adjust what's in the center, and you can adjust kind of the layout, but there's no full screen map here. It doesn't even show the music that you're listening to. It is just not a particularly well-designed gauge screen, and I wish it had more configurability like basically every other rival does. Kind of disappointing to see this one like this. Now, in terms of connectivity, one other rather interesting quirk in this car is the USB-C port situation. So you can see a USB-C port in the center, and it's lit up in orange, and there's a little orange light next to it. Well, check this out. If you tap on the button with the orange light, it turns this sort of whitish blue, and it changes the color of the USB-C port illumination as well. And that's because you're changing the function of this port. You press that button, and it switches between a port that only charges your device and a port that charges and actually hooks up your device to the infotainment screen, and you can decide which one it is that you want in that moment, which is a pretty cool feature. For example, if you have Bluetooth already going, you don't want your device to plug into the infotainment system, well, then just turn it into a charge-only port. But if you haven't Bluetooth, you can make it a port that recognizes your device as well, and you can flip it with that pretty easy button and color system, which is a really cool feature, honestly. And next up, we move on to the back seat in the K4 hatchback, and I have to say, it is surprisingly roomy back here for a compact car. There's decent room for my knees, my legs, headroom is good, actually better than the sedan because you don't quite have the same sloping roofline. This is a surprisingly decent space in back, even for large-sized adults such as myself. And there's some nice features back here too. For example, you get climate vents, which is very rare to see in the compact car space. Typically, they skip rear climate vents, but that's not the case on this car. You have them, and below Below that, you got USB-C ports back here, which is obviously nice for rear passengers for charging their devices. Other than that, pretty standard stuff back here, although I will say once again the materials are nice. Again, perforated seats in the center, leather looks good with kind of this two-tone leather surround also looks good. A very high quality place to be even in back, especially for this price point. And of course, if you want cup holders, you can drop the center armrest and they are revealed, giving you both cup holders and a place to rest your arms. And finally, we move on to the cargo area. The tailgate, interestingly, not power operated, which is actually pretty normal for a compact car in this segment, not having a power tailgate, but this car has so many other features that are kind of above its price point that I was maybe expecting it would have a power tailgate, but indeed it does not. Now, one feature I really do like here is that the button to pop open the tailgate is kind of cleverly integrated below this rear bar. Instead of reaching down here, it gets so dirty on the bottoms, kind of a long reach. You just kind of pop under here and then open up your tailgate manually, revealing your cargo area, which honestly is surprisingly large. You got decent space back here, a lot more space than you get in the sedan, and of course the rear seats fold to provide even more space if that's what you want. I will point out though that the cargo area is otherwise not particularly exciting or impressive. You don't have a power port back here, you don't have like netted storage areas off to the side, which you often see in a hatchback car being bought for kind of the purposes of practicality. You don't get that here, but still a decent sized cargo area, which is nice to see and kind of adds a practical element to the sort of sporty K4 Turbo Hatch. And with all of the quirks in mind, I'm curious to see how the K4 Turbo Hatch drives. So let's get it out on the road and find out. All right, driving the K4 GT Line Turbo Hatchback. Yeah, I read some article that likened this car, compared it to an Audi hatchback. I think it was Car and Driver. That is not true. That is not accurate. That is a very questionable piece of journalism. This car is not in any form an Audi hatchback. I was actually hoping that it would be, because on paper it's got a lot of the same benefits as the A3 hatchback from like 2006. So in a way that makes some sense. About the same power, about the same size, you know, and it's a nice interior with a lot of good equipment. So I was really had some high hopes, and then I got behind the wheel, and I have to say I'm kind of surprised at how un-Audi-like it is. Like, it's not even close. Like, that article is just so off the rails. I'll tell you the problems. The first problem is unquestionably the powertrain, which does not feel anywhere close to 190 horsepower. You know, 0 to 60 in the low sevens is probably accurate. The throttle tip-in is not good. There is turbo lag, like in a car from 25 years ago. Maybe it's an Audi hatchback from 1993. There's real turbo lag in a way that is like kind of surprising to me as a human being who drives modern cars. Like, this isn't really how they go anymore. So initially you don't really get much acceleration. Then when you finally do start to get acceleration sort of deeper in the rev range, it's loud. It's slow and it's loud. The engine is loud. The wind noise and tire noise are not great. The ride quality is not great, and also the steering is not great. The car does not steer quickly. The car does not steer sportily. Like, it's just not a particularly enjoyable vehicle, I would say, to drive. So even though they've put 190 horsepower in it, that hasn't made it fast, that hasn't made it fun, and certainly their tuning of the chassis, the suspension, the steering has not really contributed to a beneficial atmosphere either. I wouldn't say I'm disappointed in this car. At $33,000, it's like totally fine, but any comparison to a GTI or an Audi or anything like that is off base. This is an economy car first, and a slightly more powerful economy car second, if you will. Like, it's been given a little extra power boost compared to, you know, a regular Kia K4, but that doesn't necessarily make it a sporty car. Now, if you look at it from the lens of it's not a sporty car, and it's just sort of a hatchback, it's fine. And again, at $33,000, like, this is a fine car. It's got great technology for that number. There's a lot of great features in this car in a pretty impressive way, which is a big kudos to Kia. But you know, you see 18-inch wheels and you see GT on the back and you see turbo 4-cylinder and you see some questionable car journalists comparing it to an Audi, and you're like, okay, this is something, and it's just not really. It reminds me of the Corolla hatch before the GR existed. It was like, it was kind of sporty styling, and it was like a hatchback Corolla, and you were thinking, okay, is this something? And you drove it, and it was like, no, it's a Corolla. And that's exactly what this is. And I gotta say, the regular Kia K4 suffers from the same issues as this car. And I think, you know, automotive affordability has been an issue over the last few years. Cars keep getting more expensive, they're harder to buy. And so Kia has kind of made an effort to keep their cars, especially their entry-level cars like the K4, relatively affordable. But the drawback is you don't have that great of quality and that great of, you know, performance and sportiness and excitement. And I think that that's totally fine when you're making an entry-level compact car, like a non-turbo GT K4, just a regular K4 sedan. It's totally acceptable. But you play in this segment, you're getting into the hot hatch world, and I think there becomes different expectations, and this car doesn't really deliver on them. Again, fine, but definitely not a rival to like real hot hatches, including like Hyundai's Veloster N and Elantra N, which have a lot more like real performance muscle to them. I think they're much more significantly exciting cars. This is just sort of a regular hatchback with a little more power, and it doesn't deliver that much in the excitement fun department. And so that's the new 2026 Kia K4 Turbo Hatchback. This looks cool on paper. Actually, it looks cool in person. It's just not as cool as I was hoping it would be from behind the wheel. Nonetheless, it's exciting to see an automaker even creating a car like this, a kind of sporty, cool-looking, turbocharged, gas-powered hatchback in the age of EVs and crossovers. And now it's time to give the K4 Turbo Hatchback a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 47 out of 100, which puts the K4 hatchback here against some similar cars, near the bottom of the hot hatch, or the nearly hot hatch world. Honestly, I was expecting a bit more excitement from the K4 hatchback, but that really isn't the purpose of this car. It turns out it's not a GTI or a Mazda Speed 3 or a Focus ST. It's really more toward the Prius or Civic hybrid end of things, just maybe a little more exciting, but not a lot. Don't buy this if you're looking for fun, but consider the sort of fun that it offers to be a nice byproduct of a reasonably practical hatchback.